Well, it has been a great day of worship. What an incredible opportunity to worship together with you and just to be able to come together to hear of what God is doing and how great He is. Just an incredible thing for us to be able to experience together. As many of you know, we have been talking about renewal and what that means for each and every one of us, to ask God to bring a revival, a renewal in our spirits, and to understand what that means as we are preparing to hear great messages, to be challenged. My prayer all along through this process is that every single one of us will be able to ask the question, how aware am I of God and what God is doing in my life? And that's an amazing thing because it's scary. It would be almost like being called to the foreign mission field, because that's a scary thing. I have to be I'm thankful. God, thank you that you didn't call me to that. You called me to this, but it's still ministry and it's God's work. And the amazing thing about it is it's the same there as it is here. It's still proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's still worshiping a God that's more powerful than anything that we see. They just see it in different ways. And they're in a place where security is an issue. And I'm thankful for that. But we can all recognize and be aware of what God is doing and what He's calling all of us to do. So today, as we continue to talk about spiritual renewal and what that means for every single one of you, it doesn't matter if you're in school or if you're out of school or if you think you need to be out of school, it doesn't matter. It's this idea that we're able to recognize what God is doing. How aware are you of what God is doing? Here's my challenge today. We're going to talk about awakening our faith. We're going to talk about what it really means to awaken our faith. I'm going to share with you 3 things today to awaken your faith. And what I've thought about, when I think about awaking, I think about getting up in the morning, which we're all very good at doing, right? Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to share with you 3 things that will help us to awaken our faith. And I'm going to do that by reminding us what it's like to get up in the morning. So the first thing that I want to share with you about awakening our faith is that we have to wake up. We have to wake up. Now, let me just ask you this question. And I'm going to look to you students because I want to see your faces. How well do you get up in the morning? That's exactly what I thought. How well do you get up in the morning? Think about this. Some of us today, we need a crane to get us out of bed. Some of us, we need a whip to get in there. Not saying that I would ever do that as I look at my children. But sometimes we need help getting up in the morning. And I have to admit with you, sometimes I don't want to do it. There are some Saturday mornings that I just want to sleep in as much as possible. You know, if I could just sleep till 8 o'clock, that would be good. Some of you are like, 8 o'clock? Oh my gosh. If I'm going to sleep later, I have to have a little help and medication to help me do that. But 8 o'clock is good for me to sleep in. Do you remember, parents, what it was like when your kids were young? And when they seemed to wake up at the crack of dawn? And some of them may still do that. I don't know. But I remember our kids. And it was kind of like on Saturday morning, we were like praying, Lord, just let them sleep in. But we got to the point where we had to train our kids that if you're going to get up on Saturday morning, we want you to be mice. We want you to be as quiet as possible, that we don't want to see you or hear you. And that didn't work too well. But still, I remember days that it was one of those. Now, as they are teenagers, and parents, you can relate to this, waking them up is kind of like we need an earthquake. We need something to come in. We need a siren right there in their bedroom to get them up and going. And we're like that too. But let me ask you this, because I remember times in my life that maybe you can relate to. I remember the night when I was a little kid going with my dad to the deer camp. I remember that first morning. And I remember that night not being able to sleep at all. Why? Because I was always excited about that first morning. I couldn't wait to get up and to go. And it was usually, I remember having to wear the layers and being cold and all that kind of stuff, but I looked forward to that. And sometimes you can relate to something else in your life where you know you're anticipating something great in the morning. And it's like you can't sleep. Maybe you're nervous about something, or maybe you're just excited about what that day is going to bring to you. And so as soon as that alarm goes off, you're up and you're ready to go because you know what you're going to anticipate in that day. You're excited about it. I remember those times that when that alarm went off, I got up and was halfway dressed before Dad even had time to wipe the sleep out of his eyes. It was kind of one of those things. But let me ask you, church, what about spiritually? Have you ever been at that point where you just can't wait to experience what God has for your life? You can't just wait to wake up and to see what this new day is going to bring. You just can't wait to experience what God has for you that day. Sometimes we've lost that feeling. You and I get to a point sometimes where we just worry about other things. There's so many other things going on in our life that keep our focus, because what's happened is we don't see this part of our life as important as what it once was. Think about this. If you can remember back the day that you were going to be baptized and how excited you were about that day, and how excited it was to be able to experience that and to know that that was an important part of your life, to be able to celebrate and to share with those people that you care about. But what about every day? Because I know there's some of you, you might have a test and you're like, oh, just school itself, I know, brings that on. But some of us, it's work. And we're like, oh, here's another day. Some of us, it's a relationship. It's like, I've got to endure another day. What is it in your life that has become more important than seeing God and being aware of what He is doing in your life? To the point where that doesn't take the importance. That's not the priority. That's not what you wake up to in the morning. All of these other things in your life is what you wake up to. Because we've gotten to the point where God's not that important anymore. And we've lost the excitement of that. Paul reminds us of a time that happened in the life of the Israelites. He mentions this in Acts chapter 28, verse 24. Acts chapter 28, starting in verse 24. He says this. This is Paul speaking. Some were convinced by what he said, but others would not believe. They disagreed among themselves and began to leave after Paul had made this final statement. And this is what he said in verse 25. The Holy Spirit spoke the truth to your ancestors when He said through Isaiah the prophet, go to this people and say, you will be ever hearing but never understanding. You will be ever seeing but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. You see, Paul got it. He knew that people were going to allow things into their lives to the point that they began to focus and worship other things. And he went back to what the prophet Isaiah said, remember, these people have turned their backs on God and brought all these things in their life that now take importance, that now are the priority. Folks, what you and I have got to understand is we've got to be aware of what things in our life have taken the place of God. That we're more excited about those things than we are becoming aware of what God is doing in our life. We no longer anticipate that God is going to do something great in our life. We've already experienced that. I have my baptism certificate. I have my license and ordination papers on the wall. I have all those things that can mean something, so isn't that enough? But yet we don't anticipate God doing something today in your life. Are you excited about what God can do today in your life? So we need to wake up and acknowledge that God is a God who can do something great today, and not let all these things come into our life to the point where we don't understand what God is doing. We don't listen when God speaks. We don't open our eyes to the opportunities that He gives us. So the first step in awakening our faith is to wake up. Jesus said, "This is why you need to follow me." Bless you. This is why you need to follow me. He says, to follow me, you've got to deny yourself. Put all those things away and focus upon me. Jesus even said in Matthew chapter 10, verse 32, "Whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever disowns me before others, I will disown before my Father in heaven." Now, what does that mean? You turn your back on God and don't acknowledge Him. Does that mean that He's not going to acknowledge you? Well, that's what it says. Am I supposed to believe that God's going to turn His back? We have to understand that God is a God of mercy and grace, but God is also a God of judgment. He's a jealous God. Not because He has emotional problems and wants to create drama like we experience today of jealousy, but because He wants to give you everything. He wants to give you all that you need. And all we have to do is wake up and acknowledge Him, and we can experience that. We have to acknowledge and look around and see what God is doing. We have to wake up. Second thing that I want to share with you that can help us to awaken our faith is to freshen up. Think about this. When you wake up in the morning, and again, we're all excited about getting up, what are the things that we do? We usually get in the shower, we do our makeup, we do our hair. Doesn't take me very long. We do those things in order to feel fresh, to be ready to go in the morning. We do whatever it takes in order for us to help us to feel ready to face the day. Now there's times, and again, parents, I'm real careful because I don't want to talk about my kids too much, but there's stories. If my parents were here, they would, listen, my mom raised 3 boys. She was the only female in the house. And I just thank God that she survived to this day, all of those kind of things. Because there were days where she made us. I'm not going to tell you exactly the extent that she made us. But she made us go get in the shower because we stunk. You know how it is. 3 boys in the house. There was laundry that she refused to touch. She made us do it. That's how we know how to do it. We did all these things in order to freshen up in the morning. Think about all that you do in the morning. And why do you do those things? I'll have to say this. I'm sorry, kids. But if you're a parent, you notice how many times your kids go in front of a mirror. And let me just say, there are times that you and I do this also. But I notice how many times my son stops in front of a mirror. But the sad thing is, I was the same way. He learned it honestly. But it's one of these things. Why do we do those things? Why do we look in front of a mirror? Why do we do all the work that we do in the morning to feel fresh? Why is that? Because of this. Because there's something that happens when we do that. Think about it. When you feel yuck because you got out of a soccer game or a football game or cheerleading or whatever it might be, you feel yuck. You want to shower because you want to feel better. You want to clean up. In the morning, we fix ourselves up. Why? Because we want to feel good about ourselves going out into the day. We want to change something about ourselves, so we freshen up. Well, let me tell you this. Think about it spiritually, folks. What is it that you can do to make yourself spiritually freshen up? What can you do to make yourself spiritually freshen up? There's nothing. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing you can do. Why? Because Jesus has already done it for us. Think about this. Jesus has already paid the price. We're reminded in Hebrews chapter 9, verse 22, it says this: in fact, the law requires that nearly everything be cleansed with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. You see, all throughout the Old Testament, I know this is kind of gross to think about it, but blood had to be shed according to the law so that the people would be cleansed of their sins. But then we know, listen to this, we know that Jesus came and shed His blood as the perfect sacrifice so that our sins might be forgiven for all. And so the cleansing, the freshening up came when Jesus died on the cross and shed His blood for our sins, because that was the blood that cleansed us. And so the amazing thing about it is when we accept that, there's something that happens within us. In Hebrews 10:22, it says this, "Let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with a full assurance that faith brings, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience and having our bodies washed with pure water." Listen, the freshening up has happened already. What you and I've got to understand is that when we accept Jesus and accept what He did on the cross, then we have been cleansed from within. When we accept that and experience salvation, salvation is not just getting a baptism certificate and going to be dunked in the tub. It's the fact that we have an experience of cleansing from within that happens. But sometimes we forget that, because you see, when we freshen up in the morning, that gives us this sense of confidence. And so we look in the mirror and say, not bad. I did a good job today. Because you see, I never have a bad hair day. So it's all good. So when we do that, there's a sense of confidence that we have. Well, let me tell you this, church. What greater confidence, listen to this. What greater confidence can you have outside of Jesus Christ? What confidence can you have in your life to know that no matter what you did, Jesus died for that sin? No matter what you are doing, Jesus has died for that sin. No matter what you are going to do, Jesus died for that sin. What confidence can you have to be able to know that I can go before God and acknowledge Him? I can awaken to the fact that God has done something great for me so that I can now have confidence to be able to go on. Just like when you and I wake up in the morning and we freshen up. There's something that changes about us, and that's what's happened. And my prayer is that we'll understand what Jesus has done to awaken our faith. You see, because we're told in Colossians chapter 3, verse 3, "For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God." For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. Folks, that's some good freshening up. And what you and I have to understand is that we've got to become aware of that. Because the third thing that I want to share with you is to not only wake up, freshen up, but to step up. To step up. Now, what do you mean by this, Paul? What happens when you get up in the morning and you wake up and you get all ready, you eat your breakfast, hopefully a healthy breakfast, and you get everything together and you get all your stuff together, and then you're ready for the day? One of the things that we do most of the time, not all the time in our household, because you know how it is with teenagers, we're just all going different directions, but we try to understand what that day is going to hold. We have to make plans. We have to realize what's going to happen after school. You know, are you bringing your lunch? You know, do you have enough money in your account? Because we get those little reminders, low balance. You know, we have to understand that. We have to know what's going to happen after school, who's going where, in what direction, and at what time will everybody be at home together? Will we be able to eat supper? We talk about those things, and I know you do too in your life. Why? Because we're getting ready for what the day is going to hold. We get ready for that. If you have a test and you need to get up early, hopefully, students, you get up a little early and you freshen your brain because you've slept on it and you've studied and you're confident enough. Hopefully, you've studied, I saw that laugh. Hopefully, you've studied enough to where you don't have to really cram the night before. But it's this understanding that we got to get ready to go out there because the day's going to encounter many things. We have to step up to whatever we're going to face. Folks, you and I have got to understand spiritually that we've got to wake up and know what God is doing in our life. We have to understand that Jesus has already freshened us up because of what He did on the cross for us. But we also have to know that it doesn't end there. We have to step out in faith. We have to awaken our faith and step out in our faith. And this is where it's hard for you and I to understand and to grasp. Because let me tell you, you need to be ready. Just like when you wake up tomorrow morning, the first day of the work week, there are going to be things that are going to hit you straight in the face. As soon as you get up, there's going to be things that are going to come at you. Why? Some of those things are because of schedules, deadlines, work, responsibilities, all those kind of things. Some of them are because Satan is on the attack. In fact, we're reminded in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8 and 9. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in faith. You and I have got to understand that if we're going to step up, Satan's going to do it also. In fact, he's already doing it. He's doing it right now. Some of you are thinking of all these other things. Why? Because Satan is on the prowl. His goal is to destroy and devour everything that God's created, and that includes you. So you and I have got to understand that he is out there, and we see this all the time. We don't see it as much as Cliff and Sharon because we're in a comfortable part of the world, or we think. But let me tell you, Satan is an attack. They just see it more openly than we do. But it's out there. And we have to be ready. We have to step up because faith is so important. That's why Paul says in Ephesians chapter 6, put on the full armor of God. Put it on. We know this story. We know this text. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. We've got to understand that Satan is on the prowl out there. And we've got to be able to step up in the confidence of what Jesus has given us. Now, to bring all this to a close, I want to remind you of a story that reminded me of the idea of waking up, freshening up, and stepping up. In Mark chapter 5, verse 24, there's a story of Jesus and the woman that had been bleeding. And I just want to share this with you. Mark chapter 5, starting in verse 24. Jesus had been called by Jairus, who was a synagogue leader, to come to his house because his daughter was dying. And so as Jesus was coming, this is what we see. Mark chapter 5, verse 24. So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. A woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, if I just touched his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him, and he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my clothes? You see the people crowding against you, his disciples answered, yet you can ask, who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet and trembled with fear, told him the truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. An amazing thing happened in this particular story. You see, I wonder what the woman was thinking when she woke up that morning. I wonder what anticipation she had. As for 12 years she had suffered, and she thought, well, maybe if Jesus is coming to my area, my town, maybe if I just get close enough, something will happen, something will change. I'll be healed from all of this. Can you imagine what her morning was like when she woke up? Did she get any sleep the night before? Did she wake up the first time that she heard any noise? Did she jump out of bed? Was she anticipating something great? What was her morning like? That's what I want to know. Because she knew, she was aware that Jesus was coming. And then what about her getting ready? Because you see, women that had bleeding were considered unclean. They weren't even supposed to be around people, especially those that were considered religious. It was the law. She wasn't even supposed to be out there. But she thought, maybe if I just get close enough, I can touch his clothes. But she had to get herself ready. Can you imagine what was going through her mind when she got dressed and cleaned herself as much as she possibly could to go out into the crowd where she was banned from, to be able to know what was it like for her to get ready in the morning, knowing that if I just get close enough to Jesus, an incredible thing was going to happen. And then at that moment, when she saw Jesus, she thought, if I could just get close enough to touch, if I could just step one step closer to be that close to Jesus, then things could change for me. And can you imagine the feeling that came over her when she touched his clothes? When she touched his clothes, but to be able to know that now I'm free. Now I'm cleansed. Now I've experienced all these things that I've heard. And at that moment, folks, her faith was awakened to see things that only God could show her, to experience things that only she could experience because of what Jesus had done to heal her. And folks, I stand here before you and I say, is your faith that awake? Because if not, James tells us faith without action is dead. Spiritual renewal, all it is being awakened to what God can do. How awake is your faith today? Let's pray.